Sonic had a pretty rough time, is exactly what an idiot boy would say when talking about my favourite little man. Hello everybody, my name is Hob Hunks and I'm here once again to deliberate whether I actually like Sonic the Hedgehog or not. Spoilers, I do, but also spoilers, I'm going to tell you some things that you might not like about his 3D games. While a lot of fans cite the classic games as being their childhood, I was a little baby boy born in 1998 and therefore I grew up with 3D Sonic, and that is my little jam with the series. While I do appreciate the classic series, it's not exactly what I associate as close to my heart as the 3D titles, and boy oh boy do I have opinions on each and every one of them. But I'm not alone, because if I'm going to bully Sonic the Hedgehog, gosh dang it, I want someone there to do it with me. And here I have my good friend Charnucky with me, because there's no one else in this world that I like discussing Sonic with more than this little goblin of a man. Basically, this is just going to be us giving our concise thoughts on each Sonic game in turn, giving short reviews and then giving a numerical score at the end that overall reflect our thoughts and views of the game. We're going to be doing this for every major 3D Sonic game, from SA1 all the way through to the most recent release of Sonic Forces. So, let's get started. The pinnacle of 3D Sonic, plain and simple. SA1 provides everything a 3D Sonic game should have and feels like a natural evolution of the classic games. Its tight controls and great level design make levels a joy to play and characters fun to control. Most characters control similarly enough to Sonic, but each bring their own brand of fun to the table. The different stories are a great way to present the overarching narrative and makes most characters feel important and helps them develop, both across their own stories and the wider narrative. The soundtrack is still arguably the best that the series has ever offered, and while the game has aged like cheese in the technical department and big as the gameplay equivalent of entering a confused man into a fun run, SA1 is still, to me, the best of 3D Sonic. 9 out of 10.
So I'm not going to talk about how poorly this game's aged because everyone knows by now. It's glitchy and goofy looking, much like many games of its era. Sonic's controls in this game are damn near perfect, and his speed and acceleration the best it's ever been, which is a bad sign for the games after it, I know. But the issues in this game come from all the other characters. So I understand that their inclusion is like a Dreamcast tech demo, Gamma to show the shooty explodey stuff, and Knuckles is to better explore all the size and the scale of the levels, and Bigger to show off all the water physics and the fishing engine, I guess. But if these gameplay styles aren't fun, then it's not worth it. Thankfully, out of all the 6 playable characters, the only one that I don't like is Big. His story doesn't really offer anything of merit. Overall, Adventure is a very imperfect game, but there's still a lot in there to enjoy. I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
I'm about to make people not like me anymore, but that's okay, because that's exactly what happened to me when I went to replay SA2 2 years ago. I loved this game as a kid because of the fun gameplay and cool and funny story, but when I went back to play the game, I didn't like it at all. The only characters I actively enjoyed playing as were Sonic, Knuckles, and Eggman, with Rouge's levels being among the worst in the game, and it being abundantly clear due to some of his level design and enemy placement that Tails was a last minute addition. This is also something I felt a bit in certain Shadow stages, but not to as great a degree, and I can still enjoy playing him for the most part. The story still holds up, and the soundtrack is still as okay to me as it was when I initially played it, so while some of my opinion has stayed the same, my thoughts on the gameplay have changed too drastically for me to give it more than a 6 out of 10.
I'm going to catch a lot of hate for this, but I don't like this game at all. I've shit on it an awful lot recently, but I went back to give it another go, and sadly my opinion didn't change on it at all. Now don't get me wrong, Sonic and Shadow's levels are brilliant, some of the best gameplay in the entire series, and the story, as easy as to pick plot holes and as dopey as some of the dialogue is, it's still an engaging story, and the kind of storytelling I wish the series still did nowadays. Where the game falls apart is in the other gameplay styles. The mech shooter levels are slow and clunky, and they're not awful, but I'd just rather be playing a Sonic or Shadow. And the treasure hunting levels, good god, what went wrong with these here? They're far too big for their own good, and the radar system just doesn't work. I don't even understand how they messed this up. These levels were fine in Sonic Adventure 1. I know a lot of people love this game, but I find it difficult to praise a game based off of 1/3 of its content. I'll give Sonic Adventure 2 a 5 out of 10.
Me and this game have had a, let's say, complicated relationship for as long as I can remember, but after 15 years, we're finally able to see eye to eye. Heroes is a fun little attempt for a more modern game to emulate the classic style a full 7 years before it was all the series would try and do. Minimalist but fun enough story, one of the most varied and easy to listen to soundtracks in the entire series, and varied level designs and tropes. Each playthrough with the 4 teams are different enough to justify existing, and the true final boss is my favourite Supersonic fight. I just wish they'd have mixed the level order up for the different teams to make each playthrough even more varied. It has to be said though, my main frustration with this game comes from the special stages. They control worse than me after a few too many pints and all that. This probably comes down to version differences and isn't enough overall to hamper my enjoyment of the game too much, but they're still a big problem since you need to beat them to fully finish the game. Overall, Heroes is a entertaining, if sometimes frustrating, romp. 7.5 out of 10.
I like this game quite a lot. I think the team gimmick is really fun, and the level design for the most part is solid, save for a few stinkers. The only real issue with this one is the repetition. Why do we need to finish the game 4 times to get the true ending? And why does one of those 4 times have to be a series of crappy scavenger hunts? Overall, the game's nothing groundbreaking, but it's a fun time. 6 out of 10.
The oddest and funniest game in the entire series. Let's give this little dude a gun and let him be free. Whoever thought of this deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. If the game didn't try and take itself painfully seriously, have slippery as heck controls that mean I'm constantly jumping just so I can reliably come to a stop, have some of the worst levels in the entire series in terms of objectives, and make you replay the entire campaign 10 times to unlock the true ending, then I could at least laugh with it. Instead, I sigh at it. 3.5 out of 10.
Alright, this one's bad, and there's no defending it. Everyone's already talked about how stupid the guns and cars are, but the real issue with this game is the controls. Remember how good I said the acceleration was in Sonic Adventure? Well, you can throw that all out the window because Shadow hits top speed at no time at all and screeches to a halt just as quickly. The structure in this game is also a joke. The game's advertised as this kind of choose your own adventure, hero or villain type of game. But all this amounts to is replaying the same tedious levels over and over again to see every ending, and many of which are laughably bad. All this is just to unlock the last story, which barely even answers any of the questions of the story itself. A complete joke of a game and a horrible representation of one of the series' best characters. 2 out of 10.
Widely considered to be the ultimate low point of the series to many, but is something I can derive a surprising amount of fun from through Sonic, Blaze, and Silver. While a glitchy mess with a bad overall story, it looks to fix some of the problems people have with the adventure games, such as character integration. It's got a great soundtrack and some genuinely interesting level design in places, but both are buried beneath the mess of a game that 06 turned out to be. 4 out of 10.
I pretty much agree with Joe word for word on this one. Every game reviewer on the internet has already torn this game a new one for its terrible story and lack of polish. It's an embarrassing stain on the franchise and it's still yet to recover from it. But, truth be told, I think there's a solid game buried somewhere in here. It's a shame this game was rushed out the door in the state it is. A few more months of development could have easily saved it, but as it is, it's gonna have to stay a 3 out of 10.
An interesting concept weighed down immeasurably by sluggish, confusing progression and gimmicky, nearly unplayable controls. Interesting level themes, a decent soundtrack, and an okay story aren't enough to save this game from its own gameplay. 2 out of 10.
This is the only game in the series that I actually just could not play. The controls are absolutely abysmal. I played about 2 hours of this game in like 2010 and I thought to myself, my life is worth more than this, and then I've never touched it again. 1 out of 10.
The closest the series has come to reaching the same highs as SA1 in my eyes. With a stellar soundtrack, perfect style of story for a Sonic game, great design, platform-heavy night levels which are highly explorable, and fun, fast, exhilarating day levels that keep you coming back to replay them. All of this alongside the non-intrusive but charming and explorable hub world and a cornucopia of optional side content, as well as an amazing difficulty curve and the best final level in any Sonic game. I just wish the platforming and speed coincided a little bit more in this one. 8.5 out of 10.
There's a lot about this game I absolutely adore. The size and scale of the world, the story is great, and the daytime levels were amazing back when the game came out and they're still looked at fondly today. And this is easily the best looking game in the series. The big thing dragging this game down is the Hedgehog. The idea of turning Sonic into a werewolf alone is just weird, and the gameplay for the thing is just kiddie's first hack and slash. It's not terrible, but the entire time I'm playing these levels, I'm just wanting them to be over so I can play the normal Sonic levels again. Which unfortunately isn't that simple, because you need to collect a certain amount of Sun and Moon medals to unlock each new stage, meaning you need to replay each level over and over again to search for collectibles, padding the game out for much longer than necessary. 6 out of 10.
The closest thing to a hidden gem the franchise has ever produced. It capitalises fully on the potential that Secret Rings squandered with an interesting world, one of the best Sonic stories ever told, and a fitting and breathtaking soundtrack. Gameplay appears simple but has some interesting depth to it, especially with the Soul Surge system, and multiple characters are integrated seamlessly, optionally and non-intrusively. While it may lack platforming, it's still a fun Sonic game that you should at least give a shot. 7 out of 10.
This game is a huge guilty pleasure of mine. It's got the best story in the series, one of my favourite soundtracks, and a crazy amount of fan service. The gameplay is kind of a mind-numbing waggle fest, but there's a surprisingly decent amount of depth to it for those that care to look. Objectively speaking, this is one of the series' weaker entries, and I've got a huge soft spot for the things it does right. I'm going to give it a very generous 7 out of 10.
In truth, while I do like this game, when writing for this video, I had some trouble organising my thoughts about it. Like, what could I fully say about Sonic Colors to sum it up in a concise and interesting way? It's probably the most laid back and easygoing game in the series. There's enough here to satisfy you, but it can still be breezed through in an afternoon if you so choose. The structure is sound and the soundtrack is lovely, with levels that are probably some of the most uniquely themed in the entire series, and every one of them is varied enough that replays are always fun. It doesn't have the deepest story or the best level design, and to be honest, the ratio of 2D to 3D levels is sorta disgusting, but it's fun. That's all I can say. At its core, Sonic Colors is very fun. 7 out of 10.
This game, upon its release, was seen as Sonic's big return to form. No more silly gimmicks or alternate gameplay styles, gone are the overly dramatic stories, this is just a simple little platformer. The boost gameplay from release returns, which is fantastic, but unfortunately most of Sonic's abilities like the drift and the quick step has been restricted to only being used when the game permits it, and the light dash has gone entirely from Sonic's moveset. This game introduces the Wisp power-ups, which are mostly fun to play around with, and almost always are optional, so they're a welcome addition to the game. Unfortunately, I have nothing positive to say about this game's story. The entire thing consists of Sonic and Tails standing around and cracking unfunny jokes. And as much as I praise the gameplay, that's kind of only in concept. Many of this game's levels are 2D side-scrollers that involve simply jumping around on blocky platforms, more akin to an NES-era platformer and not a 2010 3D Sonic game. Overall, a decent game, but a few too many shortcomings for me to give it more than a 7 out of 10.
The best of the boost formula in terms of level design. A purely fun experience from beginning to end, with some of the best 3D Sonic boss fights and a great soundtrack to boot. Generations has it all for Sonic fans old and new, except a decent length and an actual story. But those, alongside a lackluster final level and the worst final boss in any Sonic game, are the only things that really let it down. 8 out of 10.
This one's the big boy. When this game was revealed, the entire internet exploded. Sonic's boost gameplay has been near perfected in this game. I don't understand why the light dash can only be used on certain trails of rings, but other than that, he plays amazingly. This game's big seller is the return of classic Sonic. And while he doesn't play one-to-one like his Mega Drive counterpart, his levels are still a lot of fun. The levels in this game are all beautiful recreations of stages from past Sonic games, so I don't understand why games like Sonic CD, Shadow and the Storybook games are omitted. My only real issue with this game is the lack of content. This game can be beaten in about 3 hours, and it just leaves me thinking where's the rest of it. And it doesn't help that this game's final stage, Planet Wisp, is the only bad stage in the game. It's such a shame to see all these lovingly designed levels be followed up by something that's so frustrating to play. And the final boss is easily the worst final boss in the series. Despite these flaws, 90% of this game is some of the best gameplay in the whole series, and the soundtrack absolutely bangs. 8 out of 10.
The blandest and most forgettable Sonic game that there is, complete with generic level themes, a soundtrack that sounds remarkably un-Sonic, and a flat, generic aesthetic to finish it all off. It presents some interesting ideas through gameplay and story, but leaves it there, never elaborating fully on any of its ideas. Frustratingly, the game manages to never lean too far towards good or bad, settling for stunning mediocrity. 5 out of 10.
This has to be the most bizarre game in the series. Gone is the boost gameplay, and instead we have this strange blend of traditional non-momentum based 3D platforming in Mario Galaxy-esque worlds with a new parkour engine. Some of this game's concepts seem very promising, like the parkour, which seems like the natural next step for the series, but it never feels fully explored, and unfortunately the game doesn't have much else to offer. The levels in this game feel like they could be put into any run-of-the-mill mascot platformer, and lack anything that really makes them stand out, and the story plays it just as safe as Colors did. The new villains in this game look like designs taken straight out of Monsters Inc., and they lack any of the backstory or intrigue of the series' past one-off baddies. At its best, Sonic Lost World is a perfectly run-of-the-mill platformer, and at its worst, it's an uninspired hodgepodge of weird ideas. 4 out of 10. Sonic Forces is the most insulting waste of potential in the entire series. This game was set up to do everything right. Instead of the samey one-off storylines of past games, we have a dark, high-stakes storyline with a new villain, a rogues gallery of past Sonic villains, all of Sonic's friends uniting in a SatAM-esque group of freedom fighters, and a return to the boost gameplay that was perfected in Generations. How could they possibly mess it up? Well, for starters, the reintroduction of classic Sonic had me rolling my eyes from the initial trailer. Like, yes, we get it, old Sonic was good, but what's new? And the avatar, on one hand, is a fun inclusion that I'm sure kids will love, but to me it comes across as a very awkward out-of-place inclusion, almost to Hedgehog degrees of weird. The story, that I said had all the potential in the world, turned out to play just as safe as every other entry since Colors, and modern Sonic's gameplay that they nailed in Generations has been utterly butchered. His controls feel awkward, making even the simplest jumps feel like a chore to pull off, and his level designs are either running in a straight line or more of that dull 2D platforming that played Colors, and classic Sonic doesn't fare much better. I can confidently say that even the worst levels of most of the previous games are still better than the best Forces has to offer. Even the music isn't good. The golden rule of Sonic is that regardless of the game's quality, the music is always good, but in Forces I could count the amount of tracks that I like on one hand. 1 out of 10.
The high point of wasted potential for the Sonic franchise. Advertised as something that all fans could enjoy, but ending up as something that very few do. Forces has a myriad of problems, including, but not limited to, some of the worst and blandest level design ever seen within the franchise, an unremarkable soundtrack with some good tracks, but nowhere near the level that is this point expected from most Sonic games. Gameplay that simultaneously feels too clunky and too fast, with even basic platforming being difficult and feeling sluggish. A story which had all the potential in the world, yet somehow managed to literally go close to nowhere. Characterization and tone being at an all-time low point due to the story and writers seemingly not respecting the characters, or at the very least, not knowing what to do with them. They were going to try and make us pay for Super Sonic, which is something that's always been included and shouldn't be something that we're paid for. Every single game and its unlockable feature for collecting everything, and they were going to try and charge us £2 for it. I don't care if £2 isn't that much money, it's the price of a pint, and just... Sorry, I got a little heated there. All of this isn't to say that there isn't some degree of fun to be gleaned from this game, but it's not good. 3 out of 10. And there you have it. That's every single 3D Sonic game covered and discussed by me and my boy Charnucky here today. Now, I know some of these opinions that we've shared could be seen as a little controversial, especially ones considering Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic and the Black Knight, but, you know, that's the funny thing about opinions. Everyone's got them, you know, some of them are strange, but mine are correct at the end of the day, so, you know, there's that. I just want to give a big thanks to my friend Charnucky here for joining me on this video. It was a project that he himself actually suggested that we work on together, and I've absolutely enjoyed and loved making it and everything, so big shout outs to him right there. I also hope that you guys have enjoyed the video, and if you have anything strong to say about any of the opinions we've shared, or have your own opinions that you'd like to share, please let me know down in the comments section below. I love doing this type of video because it allows me, one, to get my thoughts out there, but two, to start a big conversation in the comments section below, and given how impassioned some of the responses were on my previous Sonic video, I'm sure that there will be no less passion in the comments section this time around. So, thank you all for watching. I've been Hunks, and I will speak to you all next time. Bye bye. Right, I think that should just about do it. Right, I'll get all this edited and everything over the weekend, but thanks again for doing this with us. It was sick time, and hopefully it should be up maybe Sunday, Monday.
Yeah, cool, man. Anyway, you had a lot to say about Sonic Forces. Why don't you just make a separate video about that?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe I should.